I got this so much. People were just telling me constantly, like, I can't believe you're doing this on LinkedIn. It's so stupid. Like, you should be doing this on YouTube. Nobody wants to see you talking directly to camera, which ironically now is the format of choice. And people teach entire courses on how to talk in camera for LinkedIn videos. So I think it's really fascinating that now that's the established format. So now people are like, oh, I want to try a different format. And ironically, some of those different formats that you're seeing now are some of the things that people were sandboxing with in the very, very early days of LinkedIn videos. And I always think that as an introvert with social anxiety, one of the things that makes me feel really confident making videos on LinkedIn, first of all, was just doing it, which is why if you look at the first few videos I did, the first like 30 to 50 videos, was I super confident in those videos? Not necessarily, but I did them.
Welcome again to the Business and Marketing Podcast. I'm Rosie Osuna.
And I'm Ailey Judge. You know, there's a difference between being a creator and turning it into a business. You can build a personal brand, but what do you do with it? Do you leverage the brand to build a business, or do you make a business out of teaching the value of building a personal brand? Well, today we're talking about having a lasting career as an influencer, building a personal brand, and building a business out of your influence. But before we get to that interview, Rocio, what's going on in your world?
So recently I was reading an Airmail article that had to do with how Hollywood is embracing content creators to win back Gen Z viewership. So we're looking at things like SNL and Euphoria. They're bringing in TikTokers. They're bringing in Instagram influencers. You know, the creator economy is worth over $250 billion. We're seeing a total shift from influencers leveraging actual media power. It proves that being intentional about who you are is what's opening doors. So if you have expertise and visibility, the opportunity will find you.
So it is almost like you are your own casting call. Instead of having to go out and find opportunities, you build your own brand and opportunities find you.
Exactly.
Is that kind of what's happening?
Exactly.
Well, you know, that makes me think about there's a guy, you might have seen the videos from School of Hard Knocks, the guy James DeMullen, who goes out and interviews these billionaires and asks them, you know, how much money did you make in a year, or how did you get so rich? Well, so he's known for these interviews, and I predict that he's the next Mr. Beast, because he's done, like what you said, he's an influencer, but he went out and made his own name for himself and built a business from it. And a friend asked me about that type of influencer, and I think there's a model to it, and I think today it's hard to replicate because you have to be at that certain time. But the model I've seen for him, and the reason why I say he's the next Mr. Beast, is because he worked relentlessly in his early 20s. He built an audience, monetized it, and then he sold how he did it. And he's building a whole business, and a lot of the reason why people are paying him, because if you did it, then obviously you can teach somebody how you did it, and there's value there.
Exactly.
So,
yep. I'm seeing it too. That specific set of, making videos and interviewing people. The one I really enjoy right now is on Instagram, and it's someone going into colleges. I don't know if you've seen this one. He goes into colleges and asks people 5 questions about their expertise. So there might be, in neuroscience, and they're doing a PhD at Harvard, and he asks them like, hey, would you be able to answer 5 questions about neuroscience? And so in the comments, I'm seeing that people are like, we love this kind of pivot. We get that specific, like, what do you do for a living? How much do you earn? Now it's, not smart, but it's giving us more pieces of people's expertise. And it's not just, well-known, famous, rich people. It's people that are actually going in the education system and becoming, students and becoming experts in their field. So I think that pivot itself, I love that kind of format in videos. Is the learning bit is what's popular now.
So I think if anybody's watching, listening, and thinking about becoming an influencer, what you're going to get from today's episode especially is, it isn't just about being famous, but what can you do with that influence? Like, once people know you, how do you parlay that into business and make it make sense and open doors for yourself? The person we're talking to today is a perfect model of how to do that. You're going to really enjoy this conversation. So that's a perfect segue into our conversation. She's hasn't just watched this shift happen, she's mastered it. She's leveraged her brand as a creator and an entrepreneur to become a literal author on the subject. So here's a conversation coming up. Welcome to our show, the best-selling author of Personal Branding for Introverts, the Oprah Winfrey of LinkedIn. Check out this interview with our guest, Goldie Chan.
All right, Goldie, I've been following you since 2018. I've been following you since you started that 800 consecutive contest you had going on. It was exhausting, but very inspiring to see all of that content being pumped out when, LinkedIn decided to throw out native video. Very inspiring. So with that going on, looking back at the 2018 era versus today, how has the landscape for LinkedIn video actually changed? What's the biggest difference do you notice in what works now, and how do you stay successful in such a crowded space?
So I want to say that the biggest difference now is that LinkedIn has dedicated teams and also a dedicated, even I would say, spot on their platform for video itself. So on mobile, it's its own tab. I also know that internally that they've, dedicated specific folks to that, which they were doing in 2018, but it was a very experimental team, I want to say, back then. And now it's a little bit more seasoned because, and I hesitate to say this, it's almost a decade later, which is wild to think about. Things move so quickly. I think one of the things that worked really well back then, at least for me, and I'm sure you saw this if you were watching my videos, is I was sandboxing a lot. I was doing a lot of front-facing camera work, which people were just like, nobody wants to see that, Goldie. Nobody wants to see you talking directly into camera, which ironically now is the format of choice. And people teach entire courses on how to talk in camera for LinkedIn videos. So I think it's really fascinating that now that's the established format. So now people are like, oh, I want to try a different format. And ironically, some of those different formats that you're seeing now are some of the things that people were sandboxing with in the very, very early days of LinkedIn videos. So everything, to me, everything is cyclical. Everything kind of goes back around again. I think what makes people really successful now, and one thing that I'm just looking at myself and trying to figure out myself, is what is your lane that you're in, right? And I think that is true of all LinkedIn content, not just video. But if your video is reflecting that specific lane that you want to be known for, that only helps you, as opposed to videos that were all over the place. So when I was doing my 800 daily consecutive videos years ago, I was really doing like whatever video I could for that day. A lot of it on branding and marketing, but some of it on travel, some of it on just like thoughts of the day, questions I had for my audience. And I don't know that I would do that format again now. And I don't know that even necessarily having so many daily consecutive videos would be as successful now that LinkedIn video is out of its beta very officially.
Well, let me ask you that about the beta, because I was an early adopter too. I think I got it in 2017 before the full rollout.
Yes.
And at that time, there were so few of us. That's why I found you, because there were so few of us making video.
There were so few of us, yeah.
So few. And so here's the question though. Yeah. It's been almost a decade now.
Yes.
How is it that we're still in the minority of people creating content on LinkedIn?
What I think is really fascinating is that most people, and I'm sure you got this too, I don't know, maybe because I was a little bit more in the spotlight, I got this so much. People were just telling me constantly, like, I can't believe you're doing this on LinkedIn. It's so stupid. Like, you should be doing this on YouTube. You should be doing this on, ironically, at the time, Facebook video, which we know that didn't really pan out. So I was getting a lot of feedback like, this is not the platform for video. And I think still today, I surprise people all the time. Like, I was just at this dinner and it was for a wedding, and it was all working comedians there. So it was somebody who wrote on, like a very famous late night show, somebody at a very famous animation studio. I'm not going to name names. And they're like, well, what do you do, Goldie? And I was like, well, I used to write for Forbes, and I just came out with my first book, blah, blah. But also I'm a LinkedIn creator. And they're like, what does that mean? And I think it's fascinating. Almost a decade later, they have no idea people are creating content on LinkedIn. They're like, you make videos on LinkedIn? I was like, yeah, I've done it for almost a decade now. And at one point I was basically number one on the platform. So I was explaining to this person, they were like, "Oh, we should connect on LinkedIn." I think it's really funny, but yeah, I think over the course of a decade, I think so many more people have joined you and me with content creation, but I think the bar still feels, I don't know, inexplicably very high to so many people, even though, as you know, it's not, especially for text. And I would love to get into the slopification of LinkedIn, because I think we're experiencing that as well right now.
If you're a marketer struggling to create content that's truly unique to your brand, here's the key. Your experts and executives are your most valuable content assets. Conversational content like videos and podcasts featuring your team stand out above all other content. So instead of creating content that sounds just like your competition, start leveraging the unique voices inside your company. Thought leaders and authentic conversations build credibility and engagement. At Content Monster, we specialize in remote content production, meaning we coach your people to be comfortable on camera, then we capture and produce high-quality videos and podcasts featuring your team and customers. No need for expensive production crews, long production plans, or complex setups. Want to see how it works? Visit contentmonster.com today to learn more. Yeah, well, video makes it a bit harder to slopify it. And to me, that's a quick answer to when someone says, how do I stand apart from all the AI slop on LinkedIn? I'm like, show up,
Video.
Show yourself, be yourself, do video, because it's a lot harder to fake it. And even today, the quality is getting amazing, but still somehow as humans, we can sense there's a soul missing.
Sense it. Yeah.
When there's
somebody
a fake
was
video.
showing me their workflow. And this was 2-3 years ago. So this is very early in the AI. And they're a very early AI adopter, and their entire workflow is AI, down to their customer service, which I disagree with. But they translate their podcast into many different languages, and it's fully AI clones of themselves saying their podcast out loud in different languages. And you just sense it. At least a couple of years ago, and I think still even now, there is an element of uncanny valley with that, with them speaking directly to camera in a different language, and it just looked fake. Like the background behind them looked fake. Like they looked fake. So I'm like, who is consuming this video podcast that you're making in a different language? And I don't know, maybe they do have like a very fervent audience that is excited, even if it is AI content from that person.
I think if they found them as AI and didn't know them as a real person first, it's easier to accept. But after watching Goldie Chan for years, and then all of a sudden there's a fake one, it's just not going to work.
Yeah. And I think, I think we're getting into this space too. I remember even last year before, I got so many people who are like, I will scan your likeness into our site for free, like for you. It normally is like $400, $1,000, but for you, I'll do it for free. And I'm like, you want me to give away my likeness for your site? You've guaranteed me no safety for my likeness. And they're like, it's free. Don't worry. Wink, wink. And I get this offer, honestly, all the time. And I think now I'm getting it a little bit less, just because people are wising up to the fact that they should not be giving away their likeness. At very minimum, you should be compensated for your likeness, especially if it's being used to train an LLM.
I think one of the reasons that I've heard, at least with people that I've talked to, about the hesitation of doing videos is, not being secure in themselves. I talked to a friend recently, and she's like, who wants to see, a mother of two who's much older, talk about my expertise? And I'm like, I do. Like, I had the same exact hesitation when I was at a workshop with Heike Young at Content Marketing World. She was heading a workshop, and she was talking about, LinkedIn video. And one of the questions she asked the audience when I was in there was, what's stopping you? And I said, I started creating content video for LinkedIn in 2018, and I stopped for like 5 or 6 years. And I was hesitant to come back because I said the same thing. Who wants to see video of a much older woman, with 2 kids? Like, no one wants to see that. And everyone interjected and said, yes, we do. All those different aspects and all those qualities that make you human is why I think LinkedIn video is a powerhouse. It tells you those soft skills. It gives you those little, rough edges of that expert.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, shout out to Heike. She's really sweet. We actually recently got lunch together. And I love what she's doing. And I feel like she's so interesting because she's for sure, I would say we're almost gone through 3 waves of LinkedIn creators in the video landscape, video universe. One was, of course, like us in early days, 2017, 2018, starting from literally the start of the beta till now. And then I feel like there was really a second wave that happened kind of pandemic time when people were just stuck at home and they were like, I should just create video. I should do anything. And then I think the third wave was really recent, really in the 2021 to 2022 till now era. And that to me is like the third wave of creators that you're really seeing. And Heike is one of those third wave creators I think is really fascinating. I'm really excited to see what she's going to create next. And I think they are making the platform their own. So you're seeing a lot more of folks like that. But I want to go back to that confidence question, which is how can you be more confident just creating videos in general? And I always think that as an introvert with social anxiety, one of the things that makes me feel really confident making videos on LinkedIn, first of all, was just doing it, which is why if you look at the first few videos I did, the first like 30 to 50 videos, was I super confident in those videos? Not necessarily, but I did them. And you have to just keep doing it and doing it and doing it, just like video podcasts, right? You have to keep doing it until you feel more confident. And it is that practice that helps. But also, I think one thing that I like to do, it's a visual exercise that I personally do, is I pretend that the camera is a good friend and I'm talking to that good friend. I imagine that good friend. I'm speaking to that good friend. And that is the person that I am educating, that I am entertaining, that I am helping. And that, at least for me, is very helpful for when I get what I perceive as kind of like virtual stage fright. Yeah.
Marketers and sales leaders, if you want to close more deals and drive real revenue growth, you need cash. And I don't mean money. I'm talking about my new book, Cash, The 4 Keys to Better Sales, Smarter Marketing, and a Supercharged Revenue Machine. It gives you a proven framework to improve the 4 areas that impact revenue the most: communication, alignment, systems, and honesty. You need a stronger sales and marketing engine, and this book will show you how to build it. Get your copy now at aleejudge.com/cash. Now, back to the content.
I know you do a lot of training for executives, and
Yes.
so my agency, we record a lot of executives to create social content for them. And the key is that they're not in their head recording video for LinkedIn or recording video for YouTube. We have a conversation with them. And so once they forget the end result and they're just having a conversation, then they can relax and be themselves and be the experts that they are. And they're having a conversation as if it were a podcast, and some of them are podcasts. But it's like once we get them out of that mindset of I'm creating content for social media, that part scares people to death. They think they're doing it for that. But
Right.
just
I
having the
think-
conversation and capturing it, then it ends up on social media and it looks natural.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you're saying is you are imagining this vast virtual audience, this scary, invisible audience of millions and millions of people watching you. And I think the best way to do the best content is to not think about that. Unless you are, of course, an extrovert and you're really motivated by that, thinking about millions and millions of people watching you. I think that's not most of us, though. Most of us find it quite scary. And for executives who maybe have literally millions, I mean, like not millions, but thousands of people who work under them, you'd think that they'd feel more comfortable speaking to thousands of people at once. And some of them, they see that little blinking red light and they're like, I don't want to do this. I don't feel comfortable doing this because it's not what they're used to. And I think that's a lot of content creation too. And if we want to get into public speaking in general, I think a lot of it is I'm not used to it. So if you're not used to it, then it becomes something that of course is scary. Of course, it becomes something that you maybe are not as accustomed to or you don't want to do because you don't you feel uncomfortable doing it. But I think it's just like saying hi to your neighbor every single day. If you start saying hi to your neighbor every single day, that hello to your neighbor becomes really natural.
So flipping on that same topic of social anxiety and being an introvert, obviously
Yes.
wrote a book. So me and Lee had a conversation recently about networking at conferences. There we go. And one of the topics we brought up was
Yeah.
networking. So networking at conferences, I was telling Lee, I'm an extrovert. So the social anxiety of conferences doesn't really intimidate me because I talk to anyone, the support staff, the speakers, vendors, anyone and everyone, right? So with Lee, we were having this conversation because he was going to go to a conference and he's an introvert. And he's like, what do you do? And I was giving this plethora of things that I do, but what are really tips that you give to people that are introverted to go into conferences and feel more, not anxious about it?
Yeah. So I start with this. The goal is to meet 2 new people at the conference, which sounds wild because you're like, wait, it's a conference. There's like hundreds of people there, maybe thousands of people there. But my goal every conference is to come away with just 2 people. 2 people I had really in-depth, right? Very introvert forward, in-depth conversations with. We made a connection. We talked about a lot of things. We talked for more than 5 minutes and we had a really memorable connection. And I try to do that for all the conferences that I attend, is that I meet 2 new people. I just keep it at 2. And that doesn't mean that I don't have conversations with everyone, with the support staff, with folks. But it just means that I am really intentional about people I deep dive with, because as an introvert, I have very limited energy. And I think it's really tempting to, I'm just flash these, like it's tempting to just go grab a bunch of business cards, right? It's tempting to say like, I'm going to get a fat stack of business cards. I'm going to meet so many people. But what I've noticed with that fat stack of business cards or contact information is so rarely do I follow up with like 20 plus people, but I will follow up really in depth and jump on a call with 1 or 2 people. So I front invest in the 2 people that I find really interesting, based on what either just like personally interests me, or I just have a good connection with, or maybe they match a goal or they offer something that I need. And I make sure to follow up with them. And I always also, on the follow-up side of things, then I always immediately follow up in the next 48 hours and say, let's schedule a call. Because I want to make sure that we don't lose that momentum, that energy that we had with those in-person conversations. So when I go to conferences, I really don't try to just collect information. And I'll say this too, conferences to me are a time when I see good friends or people that I really like. I will invest time to speak to them, even if I already know them. So I'm not also always looking for connecting with like 20 million new people. Sometimes to me, that's the time to invest in friends or colleagues that I haven't seen in a long time, to do that in-person one-to-one connection again, because then people remember you. People remember you. They remember you took that time. I'm not going to name names that I was at a conference and I was sitting next to one of my friends, and if they ever hear this podcast, they'll know it was them. They know exactly what I'm talking about. And this other person sat on the other side of me, and they were just like, Goldie, do you know who I am? And I was like, what a way to start a conversation. And I just looked at them and I said, yes. And then I turned over to my friend who I was in the middle of a conversation with, and we just kept talking, because I thought that was like a rude way to interrupt me and also a rude way to start a conversation. And then I just kept talking, and then they like tapped me again, and they're like, no, I'm blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm big on blah, blah, blah platform. And I looked at them in the eye and I was like, well, that's really nice for you. Like, that's really nice. Like, I'm Goldie. And they're like, no, I know who you are. And I was like, well, that's great too. I'm in the middle of like, I'm so sorry. I'm in the middle of conversation with my friend. So like, if I could get back to that. And I personally focus on people. And I think as an introvert, it's better to focus on the people who are in front of you and have that like really good conversation. I'll say that friend and I we're still friends this day. We still laugh about that moment, quite frankly, because they think it's so funny because I literally was just trying to eat tacos and this person with my friend and this person kept trying to interject themselves in my conversation and be like, I'm number one on blah blah platform, which they aren't, but I'm like the top dog, like you should pay attention to me. And I'm like, I don't know wherever this is coming from, but I don't need to pay attention to you. So and
let me ask you this about your book, because
Yes.
I want to get into the book, because being an introvert, I think, is different for those of us who are versus the people who perceive us, because something that we have in common is that more people know us than we know.
Yeah.
Right? And they think that we can't be introverts if that's the case.
Yes.
So last week, Rocio was coaching me before I went to this event. And the beautiful thing is, after she hyped me up, I did go and I met 2 people. So you've got I've got a number now.
You have a number now.
Yep, I met 2 people. But the thing is, I go to conferences typically because I'm speaking. And when I'm speaking, that also means that I already have my tribe of people who are there, other speakers that I know, other friends.
Yep.
And people walk up to me to speak to me because I've already been speaking.
Yes.
Which means that I can be an introvert, but yet I still meet people and I don't look like one. Because I'm like, how can you be on stage if you're an introvert? I mean, I used to be a radio DJ. I would talk to millions at a time. But like you said earlier, I'm talking to this one person in my head, not millions.
Yep.
And so people think, well, how can you be an introvert if you can get on stage, if you can get on the radio? You must not be introvert. And I guess that's why they also can interrupt you, because they think they can just get in your space because maybe you're an extrovert. So what's in your book that I could find to help walk through that process of being an introvert, but perhaps being perceived as an extrovert?
Yeah. So one of them is really having boundaries. So that whole long winded story that I was speaking about was all about how you can have boundaries as an introvert, which I think is incredibly important. So if you, for example, as a speaker, right? I think speaker is a great example. First of all, yes, the introvert trick of the year is to be a speaker, because then people will come to you. So I know that at Social Media Marketing World, which I will be speaking at very soon, I will have so many an overwhelming amount of people who will come and speak to me afterwards who have been following me for years. But one thing that I do have is I have boundaries. So I have time caps on my time. So I will say, great, I will stay after my session for exactly 30 or 35 minutes or whatever that time is. And then I will set a timer on my phone, or I'll have my assistant or whoever is handling me do that. And then I will leave after that time is done. And I will go back to my hotel room and I will just have quiet, absolute nonverbal quiet. So one of the things I go through in the book is like how you can better have boundaries, how you can replenish that introvert battery, how you can get back on track after a very exhausting event. And for everyone, that is different. For me, it is I will sit in my hotel room and watch whatever Food Network channel exists. And in different countries, they all have their own version of Food Network. I want to throw that out there, which is different than the US version of Food Network. I will sit and I will just quietly watch some TV. I will kind of go over my notes for the rest of the day. I just need to be in a space where people are not constantly physically in my space as an introvert with social anxiety. So I make that very clear for myself. So I don't go from immediately speaking, usually unless I'm contractually obligated, to go to a party, to go to like a dinner, to go to blah, blah. I always take time to myself where I decompress, I debrief, and then I'm able to do the next social thing. And I talk about that a little bit in the book. And once again, different people are different. Some introverts are fine, honestly, going for a full day. And then it's at the end of the day where they crash, right? Where they then are like, for the next day, the next 4 days, I need to not talk to anyone.
I'm the opposite. I shut down before I speak. I don't want to see anybody that morning before I speak. But after I speak, where's the bar?
Yay!
I'm ready to go party.
I'm glad. Once again, I think it's good to know where you need that quiet time, where you need that space, because I think all introverts need space and quiet at some point in their day, right? Especially as speakers or someone who is going to be very present at a conference. And it's good to know when you need that quiet time and when you need that separation so you can ask for that and you can vocalize that you need that and you create clear boundaries. Like, especially for you, you're like, up until I'm speaking, I'm not going to talk to anyone. And then after I'm done speaking, then it's fun. I'm already on that high. I'm ready to go. I'm excited. We're going to do this. So it's good to know personally where you are on that spectrum.
And I think with, introverts and extroverts, even extroverts with me, when I'm at a long conference that's 3 days, I'm completely exhausted mentally because I've been on for hours. Sometimes I'm there 12 hours and my head is just like so convoluted with like, I gotta, follow up with this person. I gotta do something else. So it's like, now I gotta do it again the next day and the next day. And so for me as an extrovert, my kind of way to settle down is really the car ride because I got 2 small kids. So I gotta be quiet for the car ride. And then I gotta go home and like decompress with my kids, not try to look at the phone. Extroverts, we also go through our brain is just so full of things and we just want quiet and space. Yeah. But when you got kids, kids don't care.
Processing. Yeah, you're trying to have time to process. So one thing that I tell everyone to do at a conference is everyone has time to do this at a conference. At every single conference you go to, take 10 minutes and walk outside. You're going to walk outside and for 2 minutes, 2 whole minutes, you're not going to be on your phone. You're not going to be on your smartwatch. You're not going to be on an iPad. I don't know why you carry your iPad out with you. You're not going to be on any digital device whatsoever for a full 2 minutes. And this just gives you time for your brain to reset and for you to get some more oxygen that's like fresh oxygen into your body. And it just kind of resets your body in a very specific way to do that. Also, just like walking outside. Walking by yourself outside, taking that break, coming back in. And everyone has 10 minutes in their schedule to take a break like that.
Yeah, totally agree. It's a great method. I tried it.
Yeah.
True. It's very true.
Yep.
I got a question for that. And this is a bit of a pivot, but Goldie, like I said, I've followed you for about 10 years now, and I've seen you operate as a business, not just a creator for like a decade now. So what's your advice on managing that business as a creator and then staying consistent despite what life throws at you along the way?
Yeah, so I'm sure, or maybe I'm not sure, but I'm a cancer survivor. And part of that is, taking time off from content creation, from my business. So from 2022 till I would say maybe honestly part of 2025, I was taking off quite a bit of time off of my content creation and also off of my business side of things. And that once again is just healthy boundaries. I need to work on literally my health. And so I did. But when I'm managing my business, what I'm thinking about is what are my big goals, right? What are my big goals? And then I always think, what are my resources I can put behind my goals? I love the word resources because so many people think only about the elements of resources. They're like, I only have one person who works with me, or I only have X amount of dollars, right? But all of that is resources. And sometimes we have more of one kind of resource than the other. Sometimes we have more money, which is always lovely. Sometimes we have more people working with us, which is also great, but also kind of can be a headache sometimes, right? So it really depends on what your resources are for your business. And so I think about that a lot in terms of what are my big goals for getting to the end of the year. Because as we all know, who knows what's going to happen in the new year. But I always think like, what are my goals at the end of the year? What do I want to try to get to? Is it, I want to get to like X number of clients, or do I want to get to, I want to do X amount of money in terms of deals closed, or I want to speak at X number of places. And then I'm like, what resources do I need to make that happen? Right. And those resources might be hiring a service. Those resources might be hiring a new person. Those resources might be using AI in a really intelligent way. I always apply people to AI. if that makes sense. So I'll explain that a little bit, which is even if I do use AI, which I'll use AI for research and to find contacts and to do all that, I still apply a human being on top of that. I will still hire either a consultant or somebody from my team who will then take that data and filter it through a human lens and filter it through a human brain. So I am not somebody that's using, necessarily OpenClaw to automate all of my things for eternity. I still believe that there's an element of human checkpoints that also need to happen, because I've also heard too many horror stories of people who fully automate and then they lose so much money in business, or they lose contacts, or they lose trust, which trust you cannot even buy. So I always think, like, what are my resources? What resources can I apply to the problem at hand? And how can I get there, and not necessarily get there faster, but get there in a way that still maintains a level of the integrity that I'm personally known for, as well as getting there not in the next 5 years, right? So sometimes shorter than that.
Well, you mentioned a lot of things there that got me thinking about, as a speaker and as time evolves, we have to, or we're drawn to pivot to other topics or to other things.
Yes.
Like now we're all being pulled towards AI, like it or not. How is it that after all this time, you've been able to focus on personal brand? And maybe I missed a pivot somewhere, but how did you stay in that lane if you did? And then how do you keep from being pulled outside of that lane when maybe you don't want to?
Yeah, so I think it's funny. Every time I feel like I try to exit out of that lane, I get pulled back in. So for me, it's almost like a whirlpool. So it's funny because other people are like, I'm pivoting constantly. And I'm like, I feel like I pivot out and then I pivot right back in. Like it's like a little black hole that I end up in personal branding. So a great example. So in 2018, I want to say, Forbes approached me and said, do you want to write a column? And I said, yes, I would love to. And I'll tell you this. I was like, I'd love to write a column. I'd love to write a column on BIPOC C-level women executives, right? And how they are doing amazing work in the workplace. And they were like, great, we'd love you to write a column on personal branding and storytelling in the digital age. And I'm like, great, because you're Forbes, I'm going to write whatever column you want me to. And they're like, if you really don't want to write that column, we can move you around and try to find a place for the other column that you want to write. And I was like, you don't tell Forbes that. So I wrote personal branding and storytelling for the digital age because they were like, this is exactly your lane, Goldie. We'd love you to be in it. And I was like, darn, okay, fine. I've been in personal branding for so long. I'm going to start writing this. And then when I wrote my book, all the publishers I spoke to and my agent, also, everybody wanted me to do a personal branding book. So then it just became a matter of what flavor of personal branding book am I doing? And so at all of these big kind of checkpoints in my life, writing for Forbes, writing a book, a lot of the public speaking that I do, a lot of people want to just learn more about personal branding from me. And I feel very blessed and fortunate that people continually want to learn the same niche subject from me. So even though I've talked about different subjects, I have, as I'm sure you do too, a whole cadre of talks that are different, right? But consistently, people love hearing from me personal brand, and they love hearing my personal brand story. And I think it's because it is very meta, because I built my personal brand while literally teaching other people how to build their personal brand. And prior to this universe of me creating on LinkedIn, I was also already helping C-level executives build their personal brand internally and helping folks build their personal brand. So I've had a really consistent through line through my entire career of personal branding in a very specific way. So I am actually almost not, I don't want to say pivot proof, but I feel like I'll pivot and then I pivot back into personal branding because I have such a strong personal story and a personal tie to the subject matter. But once again, who knows? Maybe I will move on to something else soon.
Well, there's nothing better than teaching what you've done. You know, I
Yes.
saw Alex Hormozy once said, like, I'm not going to come on stage and teach you 5 ways to do this. I'm just going to tell you what I did.
Yes.
Take it or leave it. And you go, well, it worked. So let me follow what they did. And
Yeah.
so
And now
maybe
it's
that's why you
Hormozy. So amazing. Such an amazing creator.
yeah. And I can see why you get pulled back into personal branding because you walk the walk. You've done it. And so even if you only said, hey, this is what I did, and I would go, well, it worked. So it can't be something to it, evidently. So it's worth paying you for to say, well, let me see what you did because it worked.
And I think you've done such a good job about, branding yourself and the signature, the green hair. I think for years, the fact that you kept that from when I, first saw your content 2018 to what it is now, I'm pretty sure you get asked, people talk about you. They might not remember your name, which I think your name is wonderful. They always think, I'm sure, what's that LinkedIn person with the green hair?
Yeah, people will come up to me at conferences because they see the back of my head and they'll be like, Goldie, right? Goldie Chan. And I'm so thankful that I have such strong branding that people can recognize me. I remember, and I use different hair color mixes. I go to an amazing salon here in Los Angeles. But at one point we were using this day glow yellow in my hair that literally is like a black light yellow, which I didn't realize. So I was at a conference at one of the major Adobe conferences, and I'm sitting near the front, and I didn't realize my hair was black light reactive, and they were having some sort of black light situation in the room. So apparently from the back, my friend said, you just see this glowing yellow green dot that's kind of like floating around, and that was me sitting near the front, and it was like the back of my head just kind of like doing this because I was like, wee, like I was bopping my head around, and they were just like, I knew exactly, Goldie, where you were sitting because you were this dot in the darkness. And I'm like, that's so fun. But yes, I am glad that my branding is so consistent. And what I tell people too is you don't need to have, of course, green hair to have a consistent brand, right? You don't need to have glasses in a certain color, which, there's people who do that to have a consistent brand. What you need to have a consistent brand is a consistent brand. Is to have a story that has connecting dots throughout, right? I always think about classic Pixar storytelling. There is a simple and clear story. People love a simple and clear story. This is why so many sequels for shows and movies, etc., are less popular than the original version, because the original version usually had an incredibly simple and clear story. So if you yourself have a simple and clear story, people understand that. People get it. And I think people like being able to understand a story really fast. And also, we live in a world where everything moves so quickly. We're inundated with so much information. If you can distill your story very simply and very clearly for people appreciate that. I mean, this is why I think it's so funny, but my nickname in the press is the Oprah of LinkedIn. I got that from Huffington Post in 2018, so many years ago, and people still use that to reference me because it's an easy and understandable tagline.
Well, I know we got a wrap here. So show us your book again. Tell us where to find it. Tell us where to find you.
So this is my book, Personal Branding for Introverts. Feel free. You can find it actually at pretty much every place that sells books, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, all bookshop, your local small bookstore, or ask them to order it in and support a local bookstore. People can always find me at either goldiechan.com or on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Goldie. And you can also just Google me because I'm the first 3 to 4 pages in Google search, and probably also ChatGPT. So feel
Awesome.
free to look for me there.
Thank you so much, Goldie.
Thank you.
Love meeting you. And hopefully I can get to meet you at VidCon and watch your session there.
Yes, let's do it.
Thank you. Great meeting you.
you.
Great having you on. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on the show. Hope to catch you next time.
All right. The business of marketing. See you next time.
An understandable tagline.
Well, I know we got a wrap here. So show us your book again. Tell us where to find it. Tell us where to find you.
So this is my book, Personal Branding for Introverts. Feel free. You can find it actually at pretty much every place that sells books, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, all bookshop, your local small bookstore, or ask them to order it in and support a local bookstore. People can always find me at either goldiechan.com or on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Goldie. And you can also just Google me because I'm the first 3 to 4 pages in Google search and probably also ChatGPT. So feel
Awesome.
free to look for me there.
Thank you so much, Goldie.
Thank you.
Love meeting you. And hopefully I can get to meet you at VidCon and watch your session there.
Yes, let's do it.
Thank you. Great meeting you.
you.
Great having you on. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on the show. Hope to catch you next time.
All right. The business of marketing. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Business of Marketing podcast, a show brought to you by ContentMonster.com, the producer of B2B digital marketing content. Show notes can be found on ContentMonster.com, as well as aleejudge.com.